Hey, back at it. I had a couple topics I wanted to cover. Probably another video here, another quick cast. Just to share, get perspective on it. It was funny. I was reading, Breitbart, Drudge, Yahoo, whatever, and it stated pretty succinctly that Steph Curry has publicly revealed that he believes the moon landing is faked and that it's all pretend, that it didn't occur, that we never landed on the moon with space travel. And if you've never investigated this, there's a whole conspiracy theorist movement about flat Earth, about the staged moon landing, that they did it in a studio. Extensive information, extensive analysis and review. And this is normal. This is human. As everything else, there's a bell curve, and most of us believe what we see and what occurred. We look at the facts. We study some, ancillary pieces, works, information from other sources, and it corroborates that. And then you've got some on the cusp out there at that 10% at the top. They actually do analysis. They actually do plotting and graphing. They actually go in depth into the moon landing and the launch. They capture artifacts, information in a scientific manner. And you're like, wow, you really went overboard on that. And then there's a portion on the bottom, 4, 5, 7, 10%. And they think that didn't even happen, right? These are the statistics of humanity. And there's a whole group that believes that the moon landings never occurred. And that the earth is flat, whatever. All these pseudo-silly conspiracy theory components. And, it extends out and it blurs. Like the age of the earth, right? These individuals that believe the Earth's 6, 8, 10,000 years old. And regardless of what proof that you try to share, fossils, right, or tree rings, or whatever, they can dispute that. And then it goes even further because there's other beliefs, many that are faith-based, with snippets of science, right? Which individuals like that will state, carbon dating is inaccurate. It's known. You cannot carbon date with high accuracy. So when you say it's 3 million years old for the Australopithecus afarensis, or whatever the new Australopithecus skeletal remains they found, which if you haven't studied anthropology, there's been some explosive discoveries in the last 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, around, the African basin and even areas that aren't African. I think West Africa has found some very old hominid skeletons. We don't know. Come on, we don't know, right? We're digging. And most of it, we're not even digging. It's on the fucking surface. You got anthropologists walking around wasteland that has high weather pattern erosion, and then they see bone. That's how we've discovered this shit, and it's the basis for a doctoral degree, for fundamental beliefs, scientific beliefs. People that spend their entire lives in college, anthropologists, right? And then it bleeds over into all kinds of other aspects of higher education and learning, belief systems of, evolution, ties into religious, with 0.1% of real knowledge. We don't know anything, but it's still really cool and interesting. And Steph Curry recently stated, yep, I don't believe we landed on the moon. And on one hand, you're like, oh, fuck me. Dude, how can you be a great basketball player with wonderful skills that went to college, that's now on a championship team, that makes a shit ton of money, that has exposure to tons of people, right? How could he not be? He plays a game. Takes a ball, puts it in a hoop. Really good at it. Doesn't mean that he's got common sense. doesn't mean that he's extraordinarily learned or that he doesn't have some beliefs that aren't mainstream. Is he wrong? Of course he's wrong. We all know that. Have I ridden on a rocket into outer space and looked back at the great blue marble? No. Well, then how am I right? Dude, I see the SpaceX launches here every month over in Canaveral, or if you're in California, in Vandenberg, or if you're down in Houston, the landings, right? United Launch Alliance, United whatever, UAL. And we're launching shit up, or go over to Russia. If you don't believe that, go watch a rocket that we launch nowadays leave the Earth, which I've seen. I would have loved to have seen the space, Challenger or the Discovery, one of our awesome planes, right? I would have loved to have seen one of those launches. But a regular rocket launch, dude, holy shit. You can't, your denial or your ignorance is quickly turned around when you watch that. And then you understand how that thing flew. And then you go, well, yeah, but that's not a person. There's no reason to launch a person into space at the present time or in the recent history. We are not going to a planet. We're not just going to float or orbit around. We do it often now. There's a space station up there, and you got the Russians right now that are leaving the Soyuz. They're going to do a spacewalk because of that freaking hole. It's been a bunch of weird shit that's been going on up there if you haven't heard or seen it. And not only up there, but on the Russian cosmonaut, the Russian space program. Out of the Cosmodrome over there. They've had a couple aborted missions, which they in the past they'd never put in the media. But they are now, because they don't give a fuck. It's not a shot on Russia. Everybody has shit that blows up. Everybody has failed missions. Every country that's ever tried it has people die. It's part of fucking space exploration. It's cutting edge, wacky shit for the last 40 years, right? 50 years, whatever. So if you haven't experienced, I'd tell Steph Curry to go visit, Vandenberg when Elon Musk launches a rocket or something. Go, dude, and then instead of having that big satellite on the top, that big cargo bay inside the module at the top, we put a little, command section where you put astronauts in there. And then they go out and float around or whatever. Or we dock with the space station, the International Space Station. And then somebody climbs in that dock and somebody leaves that dock. And those idiots that are floating up there, they'll bring their camera down and show you how big and round and blue the planet is. And then where the moon is and how it's right next door. And oddly enough, there is no photography capability so that here on Earth we can see through telescope or otherwise the shit that's on the moon. But I guarantee you from the space station, they've got cameras that can look at the moon. Maybe, maybe not, probably not, because the space stations aren't that high up. Hundreds of miles, whatever. So maybe there is no technology to be able to see the shit we left on the moon. Clearly we went to the moon. Clearly we were on the moon. Clearly we have lunar artifacts. And it's so strange for people to say, I don't believe it. Oh, yeah. To me it is. To other people that don't have the exposure, haven't watched the films, the Mercury and Apollo rockets and those projects with that Mercury 5 rocket, the biggest rocket ever made. That fucking thing with the hundreds of thousands of pounds of thrust, or 6 or 7 million pounds of thrust. Epic, man. It's the biggest rocket ever created in history. That thing, the payload was like 500,000 pounds. 400,000 or 500,000 pounds they could put on top of that. Holy fuck. Epic shit, man. That's real rocket science, right? Werner von Braun, fucking Nazi. Crazy Nazi. So awesome shit, and it's weird to see people in notoriety, public figures, or even non-public, like Eddie Bravo on Rogan, He runs 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. He's an outstanding mixed martial artist and a premier Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu expert. Studied under the Gracie teams. Hoyce, Gracie, Hoyler Gracie, all the are named Gracies, right? That you pronounce H in Brazilian and Portuguese. He studied under a lot of them, and his dojo or his gym is called 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and he's got some great grapplers and some great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu rollers that come in and out of that. And if you don't know who he is, Eddie Bravo on YouTube, he's got years of videos where he actually shows it. But he's a whack job, and he believes a lot of these theories. Smoked a ton of weed for the last 30 years, 25 years. He's smoked a lot of weed, and I think that, you know, can tend to give your brain more or less elasticity. I don't know, where you no longer have a real foot in the realm of reality. You know, it can stretch your senses so that you can live in a little bit of a different world of possibility. Possibly through destroying some of those reasoning and thought processes or regions in the brain. Or who the hell knows, maybe enlightening them. I don't know. I think it's the former, not the latter. I think it's damaging, all that THC, 9-delta tetrahydrochloride, whatever this stupid thing is, the drug in marijuana that is your psychedelic, not your CBD, which we're finding more and more CBD is epic. Got to do more studies on that. I think that's a game changer, I'm telling you. But yeah, Steph Curry, no moon landing. It's not that strange. Why would he say that other than to be controversial? Who asked him that question or those questions? How did they get on that topic? He's a basketball player. Stick to basketball. Maybe it was just some casual interview, like on a Bravo network or something strange. He seems to be one of those cats that can move into entertainment. He seems like a very amicable, affable character, very friendly, well-spoken, good-looking. He's got a good smile. He's socially able, right? Yeah, and he seems like a very good, family-oriented, loving dude with some religious base. I recall reading about one of the championships where they did a little bio on him. But no moon landing? Okay. A little strange. I found that a little strange, and I wanted to bring it up. And I think it's a common belief, more common than people think or know. And then to go from that, no moon landing, to this ecosystem that we're starting to understand. Dude, we're spending more and more time, because I think of affluence, because of our ability to focus on the non-base human need, at least in the United States of America and Europe, maybe some facets of the Far East, when you don't have to fundamentally focus on food, shelter, sleep, water, right? 15 hours a day, or 1 hour a day, and you can go to the grocery store, and then you can spend your life looking at some other aspect or aspects of curiosity that you're deeply passionate about. These scientists now have identified vast underground ecosystems containing billions of microorganisms. So we always thought the majority of life lived on in the oceans, right? Why? It's pretty straightforward. Water, while a barrier because we cannot breathe in it, is still a fluid, viscous, right? With some somewhat complex but very, creatable apparati, whatever. Scuba, right? Jacques Cousteau, self-contained underwater breathing. We can delve into those. The Earth, you got to drill holes, you got to move it, which is why, as I was just speaking earlier about anthropology, it's so much easier to look at the surface, or those areas where the glacier stopped, and you can see all of the layers of whatever was moved in the Earth. and intelligently study that and look at the fossils and look at the historical layers, right? Well, we're finally spending enough time for one reason or another, and the impetus could be anything. It could be shale oil, it could be drilling for oil, it could be drilling for thermal heat, it could be drilling for mineral, whatever the case, right? We have clearly spent more time digging down into this thing that we live on, and the more and more that we do this, we're applying scientific methodology to it. And there are now people in the polar regions, in the mountainous regions, in the desert regions, in the near oceanic regions, the basins and shores where we're finding giant reserves of petroleum. And in your normal, Earth regions, where you have your normal sea level, plain or grassland or whatever. And I would imagine even forest, like in the rainforest, with that diversity of plant and animal. We're digging into the ground. And we're finding that scientific study is critical to understand what's in the ground, right? Not just the tool, the mining tool, the digging tip, the drill bit, the fucking ability to capture that ore, but what is it? What's there? And we've gotten so much smarter on what is or is not valuable. And it seems like the approach is that everything that we experience is valuable. We pull that core out and they look at every type of microorganism and fossilized component and mineral based pieces that come out of that. Really cool shit. And I think geology has taken a massive explosion. When we were out in Colorado, they had the School of Mines. And it was a school based on those type of natural discipline. You could be a forest ranger, you could be a petroleum expert, you could be a miner, you could be, all these sort of different and cool professions as an adult. And they had very rigorous science and math course curriculum. Very rigorous. Algebra, geometry, I don't think it went into differential equations or calculus. I think it did, maybe. That's more, your elite high-level research. Matrices and boundary values, all that shit. And it's been decades since I've gotten into that. I took a few years of physics. I got my associate's degree in physics. But complex crap for what seems to be a shovel in a hole. And it's not, but really cool. They're finding now the Earth is far more alive than ever previously thought, according to deep life studies that reveal a rich ecosystem beneath our feet, twice the size of all the world's oceans. So we've always remembered that the vastness of the oceans has emptiness, right? It's water, it's salt water. And you got to get down to the bottom, and you've got to move toward the actual land masses where you have sunlight that shows through, and there's this massive diversity. And there's this massive life form. And you've got, like off of Australia, you've got your reef structures that we're bleaching and killing, whatever, it doesn't matter. But all these things. And we know the thermal components where there's open rifts that lead down into the core of the Earth. There's methane and butane and whatever living organisms. They're living off of those things. They live off of a poisonous gas. We have no fucking clue, dude, here. And they're under the pressure of a dozen gravitational, exponents of the Earth. So instead of, one gravitation, the thing that at the surface holds us down, it's 10 or 12 times that. So the pressure and the force is massive under there from all the way to the water as you move to the center of our Earth. These things are living fine. We really don't understand what life is other than our own, which we've studied somewhat perfunctorily. But we're seeing this shit, and we're starting to understand that this is a living planet. We don't know what life is. Religion, God made us, just like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'm not going to get controversial or go into that at all. We're finding out so much more as we really are developing the capabilities to investigate. And they're seeing, despite extreme heat, no light, minuscule nutrition. That's our explanation of it. Clearly there's a lot of shit that they're eating down there and they're doing fine. Intense pressure. Scientists estimate this subterranean biosphere is teeming with between 15 and 25 billion tons of microorganism. And that's just some bullshit formula that some genius came up with. They have no idea, right? Hundreds of times the combined weight of every human on the planet. Remember when you read the science books and they said if you take a cubic foot of a field anywhere, a grassland, a field anywhere in the US and dug it up, there are more organisms in there than people on the globe. That's real, man. And we're starting to see that, and we're starting to really understand it. The microorganisms, the insect life, the, all the different type of stuff that's living in there. So we've now seen some of this, and we're starting to understand this. It's researchers from the Deep Carbon Observatory. These guys are doing the study, these gals. And they say the diversity of the underworld species bears comparison to the Amazon or the Galapagos or anything. It's unlike any place. It's still largely pristine because we haven't dug into the subsurface of the planet. We haven't destroyed it yet, for the most part. Some of it we have in some places, but for the most part haven't touched it, which is why the planet's still alive and doing well. I found that unreal. That we're shocked about it. What'd you expect? This is a living planet. This thing, with the way that it makes, that we have this continuous air that we breathe, and then these weather patterns. We're going to ultimately understand all of this. And this whole thing is either alive or it's the decomposition of life. That's what this planet is, man. Which is why it's so wonderful. I don't know if it's unique. We don't know if it's unique. Are there others like it? But it's fucking incredible. It's cool as shit. And it has so many beautifully simple, extraordinary secrets that we're starting to finally see. And man, we're a virus and we're consuming it. And these kind of stories show me that maybe we won't totally deplete and destroy it. We'll actually find a balance and we'll understand this thing. But it doesn't shake my belief that we're going to have to move off this planet. We're going to have to leave. We will consume it all. Hopefully, we'll be able to recycle and we'll be able to reinvigorate and we'll be able to rejuvenate pieces of this. I don't know. We seem to be just eating up the oil and the resources and the land and the minerals and I don't know. But I thought that was wonderful and an awesome story, and I wanted to share that. Pretty epic shit. And then on a last note, over in Israel, they have taken in a petri dish-esque style, the Israeli scientists have taken biomatter from cells of animals and they've grown, I don't know if it's consumable, they've lab grown meat of those animals. So as I've talked earlier in earlier podcasts about what we're becoming more and more capable of doing. This is, on the surface, our ability to grow food source. I don't know about the cost or the profitability or the effectiveness, but we can actually take some component of animal cells and replicate them so that we can then have animal, and for whatever purpose I'd imagined, right? Steak consumption or laboratory testing or whatever. And so these Israeli-based scientists at Aleph Farms say that they've created the world's first steak grown in a lab. And I don't know if they tasted it or whatnot, but in theory we're talking you could be eating bison meat without killing bison. You could be eating whale without harming whales, says Jan Dudkowitz, a researcher at Johns Hopkins. Regulators in the U.S. are still evaluating whether cultured meats are safe for consumers and whether they should even be called meat. While proponents say these new meats can produce at a fraction of the environmental cost, the same that come from traditional large-scale farming, from grass-fed to lab-grown. So it's becoming reality, man. Remember GMO, genetically modified and non-organic, cultivated and industrial farms. The world's a-changing, and the more and more people we got, we're going to have to feed them. And it sure seems like these cats are looking at different, new, and brilliant ways to do it. And we're going to have your scientific meats, another strange facet. So I thought I'd bring that up. I don't know where this will go. I'm sure we probably won't hear a lot about it. And in a number of years, some of your third worlds will be eating lab-grown meats without their knowledge, with their knowledge. And in some weird way, shape, or form, something will occur, tainted meat, something, and it will become a headline. And they'll say, oh yeah, that was an import from Israel. Or the US. That was cow grown in a lab. And they export, 20,000 ton of lab-grown cow every year, every month, every day. And now the Indians can eat cow that isn't breaking their religious, belief that they're, devouring the holy animal. I don't know. Strange. But it's bleeding over everywhere. We aren't going to be aware of it. The world is really changing, and it's at a frightening speed. I think this is the new age of enlightenment, these last 50 years. This American machine has really kicked off another period of human evolution. And that's how the history books will capture this. And it's weird. I don't know if we're at the tip of it, at the beginning of it, if we're like a bit into the open project. But it's happening, and what the goal or goals are, or where this thing's going to end up, or if it will end up. It's exciting. It's scary. There's anxiety. It's weird. It's not something that hasn't been probably imagined by a sci-fi or whatever writer. I'm sure if you sit back and creatively, daydream about what could happen, those are possibilities. But yeah, strange. So I wanted to bring up those stories also, and maybe I'll post a separate video for those today. But yeah, no brutal political stuff, but a lot of strange scientific stuff going on. Watch out the meat you eat. It's not just dog or horse. It could be lab-grown cow. Brr. No moo. That thing never mooed. We grew him. We grew him without the mooing. No mooing. Yeah, enjoy. Out.